adverse consequences. This can range from rising water level to flooding to extinction of plant and animal species. Extinction of plant and animal species. And you would agree with me that adaptation is limited because climatic emissions are very unpredictable. One cannot sit down and predict the way the climate will go in 10, 15, 20 years to come. So how long would we keep on adapting to these situations, whereas we can just curb them once and for all by reducing climatic emissions? So we believe that one of the reasons for sponsoring or funding mitigation is to curb the excesses, which, if left uncontrolled, can have adverse consequences. Also, the last reason I'll be propounding is that climatic emissions, mitigation of climatic emissions, the measures needed for mitigation of climatic emissions have benefits to public health. For example, one of such ways we can mitigate climatic emissions is taking a walk instead of using your car. You would agree with me that that's also a form of exercise. Taking a walk instead of using your car. So there are other benefits. You would agree with me also, another way of mitigating climatic emissions is reducing the way we burn carbon, probably by gen. You would agree with me that that will curb air pollution. So it is also beneficial to public health. My team member would come and speak on the strategies which the government can generate or push its funds or resources towards mitigation. Conclusively, I and my teammates believe that if mitigation is championed as opposed to adaptation, the issue of climatic problems and quagmires will be solved within the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the first speaker for the Parliament, Tim Ruby. Let's hear from the first speaker for the opposition, Tim Berry.
Every mother possesses this quality. Whenever she's angry, everyone around her gets to hear the brunt. My African mother possesses this quality. The Indian mother of my friend Shanti also possesses this quality. And Mother Earth possesses this quality. The sad truth is that Mother Earth is angry. And the 7 continents are facing the brunt of our anger. Members of the House, I'm the leader of opposition, Oladipupo Ramadan Olanipo, and this House believes that resources should be calmly allocated towards preparing to adapt to the impacts of change, other than towards reducing climatic emissions. You see, we want to build a world where the impacts of climate change are not felt. And to do this, we first need to demolish the world already set on my opponent. My opponent talked about cost effectiveness of mitigation. But the United Nations in 2007 revealed that developing nations are the most affected by these climatic issues. Developing means these nations do not have so much money to spend. And for mitigation, it involves very expensive projects like transforming into renewable energy sources. This is not actually practicable by these developing nations. However, adaptation, on the other hand, has a lower barrier to entry, and these developing nations can easily hop on. My opponent also suggested certain things that we could do to reduce climatic emissions. But in theory, although they look beautiful, practically, it's almost impossible. He suggested taking a walk instead of traveling by car. But this isn't very practicable because which person has to work by 8:30 a.m. and will start walking from their house to their place of work by 8 a.m. She also suggested that we should curb carbon emitted by not using generators. But this isn't also very practicable because if we take Nigeria for a case study, our power supply isn't exactly perfect. So how do we expect these people to stop using generators? Now, we need to build a world where the impacts of climate change are not felt. And I'll do this by telling us 2 points. One, the ineffectiveness of mitigation. You see, if today's debate was holding several years ago, then maybe we might consider reducing climatic emissions. But sadly, right now, it's already too late. Because according to the United Nations report on climate change, climate emissions have already done their damage. The Earth is hotter than it has ever been. Rainfall is problematically unpredictable, and floods are becoming a life-threatening menace. So even if we decide to listen to the government and prioritize reducing climatic emissions, it would be like giving medicine to an already dead person. Because reducing current emission levels would not stop the effect of past emissions, and eventually, when these effects become unbearable, we'll have to implement adaptation practices. but not after wasting precious resources and time. So this opposition is saying, why do we have to waste our time, waste our resources, and put our lives at risk when we can just prioritize adaptation right from the onset? In addition, this House wants to discuss the fact that adaptation solves current pressing problems. You see, on the 18th of March 2024, the European Commission for Climate Change published an article titled The Consequences of Climate Change. I'll tell us 3 of these consequences and tell us how adaptation would help us fix these consequences. 1, floods. If we implement adaptation processes like increased flood defenses, would save millions of people from getting swept away by angry currents. In addition, if we talk about the high temperature, which was also discussed by this article, if we implement adaptation processes like planting heat-resistant crops, would save millions of people from dying out of starvation. If we also talk about the sea level rising, as revealed in this article, if we implement adaptation processes like easy warning signs, would save millions of lives from the rising level of the seas. However, if we decide to go with mitigation, we'll just sit in hopes that a miracle happens while millions of savable lives are going to be lost. You see, this opposition is not in any way trying to claim that mitigation is a horrible idea, but it takes time to reduce emissions. And if we try to do this by switching to renewable sources of energy, it's also not the cheapest. So what this House is saying is that the primary resource allocation should be given to adaptation so we can keep saving lives while the work for mitigation continues on in the background. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the first speaker for the opposition, Tim Berio. We are now going to hear from the second speaker for the parliament, Tim Ruby. Tim Ruby, your second speaker. We can't hear you yet. We can't hear you.
Good day. I'm Gloria Chinwe of Team Ruby. Can you hear me, ma?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good day. I'm Gloria Chinwe of Team Ruby, and for the purpose of this debate, I am the second proposition, and I'll be handling the strategies for mitigating climate emissions, which the government can allocate their resources to, as opposed to adapting to them. But before I proceed, I would like to debunk some of the claims made by the first opposition. He stated that mitigation is not practicable in developing countries, but in countries like Nigeria and in the continent of Africa, we make use of solar panels and inverters, so the curbing of generator is very practical in African continents. Now, on to my strategies. First of all, energy transmission. Instead of burning greenhouse gases into the society, the government can allocate our resources to more natural, renewable, and sustainable energy, like solar panels, hydroelectricity, and even wind vane power electricity. A research carried out by Wikipedia in 2022 posits that fossil fuels provide 85% of energy world consumption and 76% of greenhouse gases. The burning of fossil fuels and biomass is a major contributor to air pollution, which has caused an estimated 7 billion deaths on a yearly basis. So the transmission from low energy carbon is a surplus in health, which my first speaker has already expatiated on. Africa as a continent plays a major role in global decarbonization. The second largest forest in Africa, according to Global News, the Congo Basin, is the largest carbon sink in Nigeria, and it is responsible for absorbing 4% of the world's global carbon. Africa is also endowed with various rare earth materials like lithium and carbon, which are essential to climate energy transmission. According to the Natural Geographic Research in December 2023, lithium, 70% of lithium is deposited in only just Congo. With all these resources lying around, it's essential and it is impertinent that the African government allocate these resources to mitigating climate emissions as opposed to adapting to them. Moving on, carbon sequestration, the process of capturing and storing carbon in a carbon pool, which is crucial to mitigate climate change by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This can be done by forestation and reforestation, by reducing lands, re-establishing forests that have already been degraded in the past, flooding and control of flooding, biodiversity, enlarging forests. These are but a few of the resources to mitigate climate emission. Last but definitely not the least, carbon taxation and pricing. With the government leveling price on carbon emitters, it will make them responsible for each, I repeat, each ton of greenhouse gas they reduce into the atmosphere. This can be done by carbon pricing, and this was affirmed in the Paris Agreement of 2015. It is on this ground that we, the Parliament, believe that the resources should be allocated to mitigating carbon emissions than adapting to them. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the second speaker for the proposition, Tim Ruby. And now we'll be hearing from the second speaker for the opposition, Tim Berio.
Members of the House, I am the deputy leader of the opposition, HJIUF, and as the first time as an observer of the HIS 301 class, that's the history of contemporary Africa. What stood out for me was how the Kanem Borno Empire handled war. You see, the moment the Kanem Borno Empire gets unified on their war, what they do, they try to dialogue to first resolve the war. But the moment the war breaks out, what they do is to build a support system strong enough to defend themselves and to protect their citizens. Members of the House, this is basically what is happening currently. As the war of climate has started, and what we need to do is to build defense system strong enough to protect us and help in reducing the harms of climate change. On this note, this House believes that resources should be primarily allocated towards preparing for adapting to the impact of climate change, rather than allocating resources towards reducing climate change. You see, adaptation strategies could be infrastructural or even institutional. It is very simple. To combat erosion, you plant trees, and to combat drought, you engage in selective breeding. These strategies help to reduce and moderate the harm climate change causes to humans, as these are the basis for creating laws to regulate human conduct and to help prevent harm. You see, the opposition, the leaders, the opening government argued that we need to prevent climate change in order to save the world. But it's important to note that one of the major causes of climate change is the fact that the world is overpopulated and more carbon dioxide are being emitted. The right to life has been guaranteed in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So the opponent trying to say we should try to limit the population of the world by killing persons to try and prevent climate change. It's definitely not possible as we try to deprive persons of their right to life. But we are acting in contrary of the provisions of the Constitution. So rather than kill persons to prevent climate change, what we need to do is to build a structure strong enough to adapt to the effect of climate change. The UN on Environmental Program in 2020 reported that adaptation policies help to manage climate dangers and has been successfully implemented in 70% of the countries in the world. In implementing these policies, the UN in 2007 advised that developing nations like Nigeria should be the major focus as they are the most vulnerable to climate change. What this means is that in implementing strategies to combat climate change in Nigeria, policies that are being used must conform with our reality. Audience, what is our reality? According to statistics on the 2nd of February 2023, 12.1% of the global population in extreme poverty are in Nigeria. You see, what this means is that 88.4 million Nigerians are in extreme poverty. The statistic further explained that these 88.4 million naira live below $1.9 yearly. This amounts to 2,660 naira daily. See, if the government allocates resources to implementing these policies that prevent climate change, what this means is that the poor citizens in Nigeria are at the receiving end, as if they also allocate resources to prohibiting the use of fossil fuels and encourage the use of renewable energy, only little Nigerians can afford renewable energy. On this note, this House believes that adaptation should be implemented rather than mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the second speaker for the opposition, Tim Berio. Now, to crystallize this round, we'll hear in 1 minute each from the two sides. We'll start with Tim Ruby. Tim Ruby?
To further add emphasis to what has been said, the advantages of mitigation cannot be over. Believe that if the government channels its resources to energy transition from fossil fuels to more renewable sources of energy and also carbon sequestration, the effect of climatic emission of greenhouse gases would be minimized. I believe that it is better to treat a disease at the root than to manage the symptoms. Adaptation is just a form of management of the symptoms of adverse release of greenhouse gases, whereas mitigation seeks to curb it at the root. Conclusively, mitigation should be adopted and funded heavily by the government for a better world and a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim Ruby. Let's hear from Tim Berry.
In a bid to create that world where the impact of climate change is not felt, we still need to demolish the buildings already set by my opponent. To begin with, my opponent stated that the problem of generators could easily be curtailed by the implementation of solar panels. But she did not state any statistic to tell us the population of people who use solar panels, because the actual truth is that in comparison to the people who use generators, people who use solar panels in Nigeria are almost insignificant. And if we compare and contrast, the carbon emission would not be accurately accounted for by those people who use solar panels. In addition, my opponent talked about carbon taxation and pricing. But you see, that is a beautiful idea, only in theory. But theory isn't always practical because, like I stated earlier, as reported by the United Nations, developing nations are the most affected by climatic issues. And these developing nations do not exactly have that infrastructure that's needed to properly implement carbon taxation and pricing. Like we've already stated, adaptation policies have a lower barrier to entry, they are easier to practice, and they have more predictable outcomes as opposed to mitigation. Hence, we have built that world where the impact of climate change is not felt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was the crystallization of this round by Tim Berry. Congratulations to all the teams that participated in the day 2 of this quarterfinals. At this point, we would hear from the judges. I know that, or I think, and I believe that one or two of them may have, or all of them may have something to say. So at this time, Barrister David, Barrister Marvelous Ayo, Barrister Ayo, any feedback for the debaters?
All right, good
Today.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I just want to first of all commend all the teams. I believe you have, shown. I could see some, really passionate arguments, or I could see the passion, in your presentation. I think that's really, really commendable. I can also see all the efforts that you've put, and as well as keeping to time. I noticed that for today, a number of the teams actually did keep to time. They were right on time. They did very well. So that is very good. So I think maybe just 2 things from my end. The first one is I noticed that some teams kind of struggled with maybe, factual maybe statistics and maybe facts to support some of the arguments that they made. So there are a number of teams that just, kept on making assertions that they didn't have any backing for. I think you need to really look out for that, so that when you are saying, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying, you're saying, oh, there's either the UN or there's somebody or there's something or there's, there's this figure, there's this statistics. So I saw that there was a lot of, bold assertions and bold claims, but there was no factual or numerative evidence to support them. And second one, I think the second feedback I will give, and this is actually, a very huge concern for me, is I noticed that there's a lot of informal language, and then there are a lot of maybe grammatical expressions or mistakes that you could have avoided. So for example, somebody's talking about bringing out. Why don't you use words like portray? Why don't you use words like indicate? You see? So and then some of the expressions you were using, or somebody said something like, oh, although I just said that now, but again, it's not a conversation that you're having. It is a debate. You say, my team and I, you should say, I believe the correct expression will be, sorry, me and my teammates. I believe the correct expression will be, the opposition believes, this team believes, I don't know if you see what I'm saying. So, somebody said, and all of that, I'm sure there's a more elegant way to, after saying everything you wanted to say, they said, and all of that. I believe there's a more elegant, somebody also said, whatever thing. So you need to really watch out for all those expressions. And then somebody said, saw it dim, instead of, to dim it fit. So there were just a few, expressions that I believe that could have been corrected. And maybe it was just the pressure, I appreciate that. I appreciate that when you're trying to make a presentation, you could get a little frazzled, but that's the beauty of it. We're not judging you only on your content, we're also judging you on the way you have presented. And there was a lot of informal speak that I believe that you need to work on. So, for all the teams that make it to the next stage, please pay attention to that. And even if you didn't make it to the next stage, for any other activity that has a formal slant to it like this, you need to be careful so that you don't get caught in these traps. So I think those are the two major comments from my end, but otherwise, well done to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you for that robust feedback. All right. I trust that the teams present are taking note of this, particularly. I hope everyone here is taking note of this. All right. David, marvelous.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon.
Okay. Kudos to the teams who have debated today, and I think they've done exceedingly well, beyond expectations. They have shown some great level of research, industry, passion, effort that has been put towards this debate. For particularly the last thing, I kind of enjoy their topic because it's a field I also play into. So I think they did the appropriate research, and so more could be done. And in view of the fact that there is still another round after this, I would implore them to put in more effort. And as my co-judge had said, some of the evidence that are adduced should come with some facts. I think I pointed out that yesterday, that the teams were able to direct us to the places where you could elicit those facts. So we hope to see more of that in the forthcoming round. Now, particularly or specifically to Team Pearl, yes, the first speaker for Team Pearl, I noticed there were some, the speaker wasn't too coherent. I wouldn't know if it was network issue or because I observed also that there were a bit of stuttering in his speech. So he was perhaps swept off his feet. So I just think, and that actually reduced the point because the speaker was even asking for if you could start the time all over again. And I think that is not so good for a debate. So if should they cross to the next round, I implore them to do. I implore that particular speaker to be prepared and ready to face the challenge. The second speaker, for the opposition, yeah, I think the speaker was very calm. I took particular notice with respect to the calm disposition of that speaker. So, and I expect, there is some kind of clarity that comes with calmness. Debate is not just all about trying to speak as fast as much as you can. You could be very calm and the message will still be passed. So I think that was fine. But I also want the overall team to know that the grading, they are being graded for clarity, use of argument, rebuttal, language, and style. So it's not just all about the use of argument, but also the organization and clarity. Some things we organize, others wearing. And also for rebuttal, I think I kind of also enjoy the rebuttal mechanisms that we employed by those teams, because it's not so easy to rebut on points that were made on the flies. It seemed just made a point and you just have to rebut almost instantaneously. So I also acknowledge the industry that is put into that. But generally speaking, yes, lastly, time consciousness. We spoke about this yesterday, and I think the team today, I don't think there was any speaker that exceeded the time allocated to him or her. So I would give a particular kudos to the team for being time conscious. I wish all the participants the best of luck. For those who will be scaling to the next round, and for those who would not, they did quite well, and I believe much could be done or done better next time. Kudos.
All right. Thank you, David, for that robust feedback also. And I know that the participants noted all that you said. Okay, Mavi.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my co-judges
I know
have done. Can you hear me?
Yes, but I noticed that I know that I and David's video was on, but I couldn't see them. I don't know if it's just from my end, and now I can also see you. But no problem. Go on.
Okay, so my co-judges have done a great job. They've given constructive feedback, and I have no other feedback to add to that. I want to say congratulations to the teams. You've done a commendable job. And I also want to encourage you to keep up the good work. Take this feedback that has been given and work on yourself so that the next time you stand before anybody or any panel speaking, you are better than how you were the last time. So well done, keep up the good work, and congratulations.
Thank you, Marvelous, for that. I appreciate David, Marvelous. Thank you for being part of this from yesterday up till now. Thank you. We appreciate you. I do appreciate you. And to the teams that qualified in this quarterfinals, I also appreciate you all for the efforts. Thank you for bringing in your A game into this. And for those that would be moving on to the next stage of this competition, congratulations. And for those that may not be able to do so, still congratulations. The exposure I know was beneficial to you. Remember that you are a winner. And what makes you that? If you constantly and continuously improve. The results will be out on our social media handles as soon as it is ready. I would be compiling the feedback from all the judges within this week until the next, and you will know the results as soon as we are done with it. All right. Thank you once again for being part of the Honorable Justice Innocent Umezulike Foundation National Debate Competition 2024. Thank you and have a fruitful weekend. Bye.
All right, thank
You
you. Bye.
requested to see our faces, so I think here is it.